All right, hi everyone. So excited to be doing office hours today. So let me get my screen shared and I'll explain what this is. So office hours is a twice weekly thing that I do to answer people's questions and things. I primarily answer people's questions who are actually on the Zoom call, and you can find the links to the Zoom here. If it sounds like I'm a little under the weather, it is because I am. I don't know if it's the coronavirus or not, but I do have a sore throat and I'm stuffy. I didn't check my temperature, but I should. I don't think that I have a fever though. So I will be drinking water. Yeah, and it might be hard for me to talk this whole time. So we'll see how this goes. Yeah, so I answer mostly questions from people who are in the Zoom, but we do have some questions on the Discord chat as well. So if you want to see those as well as links that I share, then go to the Discord chat. And let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. So anybody here on the Zoom want to ask the first question of the day? Oh, one other thing. I will not be doing Thursday this week. So there will not be a office hours on Thursday because we're going to be doing a family thing. So that'll be the first time I think that I've canceled an office hours since I started a month and a half ago or so. So it's kind of fun. Okay. So what questions do people have? I'm going to grab the YouTube link here really quick too while I'm waiting. If there are no questions in the Zoom, then I can go to the Discord.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Kent. Thanks for hosting this.
Yeah.
I had a question, but it's regarding like an implementation I'm trying to do with React Final Form.
Okay.
I don't know if you will be able to answer. So the idea is to have an application that behaves in the same way like Google Drive does, in such a way that when you save information, it automatically saves at the moment that you have, and the sheet is always updated with the most current information. I'm not really sure how to implement that with React and Final Forms, so just asking for some open thoughts out there if you have some.
Yeah, I've never used that library, so I can't really speak to the technical aspects. But one question that I have for you is just to make sure that I understand, you're trying to make it so that every keystroke that I type into this form would automatically get persisted in the back end. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's the general idea. Just to have sort of functionality like the way Google Drive has. Like you don't have, maybe I can wait for maybe 2 seconds before I send the request, but the idea is that I should have the latest information that I type also updated with the server.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the I mean, I do this in the Bookshelf app. It's probably not quite what you're looking for, but maybe a little bit. So this notes in text area here, I can say, I really like the author. And you'll see I get the little loading spinner right there. So after 300 milliseconds, I think, of no typing, it updates the back end. The biggest challenge with something like this is like if you're doing something that's collaborative, that two people can be editing at once, if there's a conflict, then like how do you decide which one of those is correct? Especially if you start trying to make things work offline and stuff like that. And that's a problem space that I haven't really explored myself. So and I haven't used React Final Form, so I don't know if I can be of much use to you. Sorry.
That's okay. Any recommendations on maybe a form management tool that you've used before that can maybe offer the same functionality?
I don't know if any libraries that offer this type of functionality out of the box. I think you like I haven't used many form libraries with React, or at least not very extensively. So if I were to build an application that used forms heavily and I needed an abstraction, then the first one I would try is React Hook Form. This this library, people seem to really like it. That's interesting. I don't like that part of it. Yeah, so people seem to really like React Hook Form, and it has the API that I would like to use. So this is where I would start, but I don't think that any form library, there's no form library that I know of that implements this type of functionality out of the box. You have to build it yourself. Now, like I said, I haven't done a lot with forms in React. All of the forms that I've done with React were simple enough that I could just use the form APIs directly. React makes that pretty straightforward. But when you get pretty complex forms, that can be a challenge. So something that you might do is go to the I need this and explain what you need and see if anybody has suggestions for that.
Awesome.
And
Thanks.
Alex is asking a related question. I prefer React Hook Form, but I've only used Formic like a little bit. So I really can't give you a legit opinion because I haven't really used any of these solutions. So cool. Any other questions? Anyone else here in the Zoom chat?
Hello, Ken. I
Hey
have
there.
a question. For continuous integration, continuous deployment, do you have some preferred solutions or tools?
Yeah, so when I was at PayPal, I just used what PayPal was using, which was Jenkins. I hated it. And I used Jenkins in the past. I never liked Jenkins. It was just always really complicated for me. Before PayPal, I kind of made the decision for what CI we used, and I did a bunch of research and found Snap CI, which is let's see. They're no longer running anymore. I believe that this has been deprecated. Yeah, no longer available, which is a shame. But they have GoCD, which is one that you can run yourself. So Snap CI was a hosted version of GoCD, and I liked it really well. I can't really speak to it now. This was years ago, and I know that there have been several CI solutions that have been either created or improved that might stand out beyond this, especially if you want something that's hosted. So yeah, I can't really answer this one either very effectively because it's been like years since I made a decision on which CI to use, and the last time, or the last CI that I used, I didn't choose. I just hated it, and it was Jenkins. If I were building a product today, or like all of the projects that I use, I have Travis CI because it's just, I've been using that for a long time and it's pretty simple. I just have a couple scripts and whatever. And then I use Netlify for the CI/CD pipeline, and that actually works out pretty well. It may not scale super well for, if your build takes a really long time, they time out after 20 minutes. Though honestly, that might be a feature. Too many places I've been at, we just are okay with a build that takes 2 hours, and that's, yeah, not great. So finding a way to keep it within that 20 minutes could be quite useful. Though, excuse me. I don't know if you have too much wiggle room with Netlify CI. So another one that I would look into is, oh shoot, what is it? Circle CI. I've heard really good things about this. My good friend Gleb Bamatov uses this, and he's a super smart person. And so this would be another one that I would look at. So hopefully that's helpful to you, Jose.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me put some links in here. I've been neglecting my linking duties here. And this one. Okay, cool. Any other questions in the Zoom?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, hey.
Regarding the app state management, for building a scalable React app that's dynamic and based on user interactions and data, would you go for an external state management library like XState, Recoil, or Zustand? Or you would you stick with the internal React state management?
Well, the first question you need to ask is this state or is this server cache? And based on what you said, I'm guessing this is data that's coming from the server, right?
Yeah, coming from the server.
Yeah, so for this, it's not technically state, it's, and this is a very common miscategorization that I've been trying to help change, but it's a server cache, and that's that difference needs to be embraced, and React Query does a great job embracing that. So this is what is what I use for managing my server cache, and it's great. So give this a look, and it can manage, you know, dynamic stuff. You can hook up a WebSocket to this, and so it can keep everything up to date, but it just does a really great job of managing your cache. So this is what I would recommend.
And for managing the local state management, would you go for an external one or just React?
Yeah, so if we're talking about UI state, then there are a couple of things to look at. So first of all, I have this blog post. It's managing, or what is it called? Application state management. So give that blog post a read, but basically React is a state management library, and so it can get you a really long way. For complex state situations, then another really good one is using a finite state machine with something like XState. And I've got a blog post about that. Finite state machine. I think that will, dang it. Let me find it. State machine. Yeah, here we go. This will give you a really quick intro to state machines. And then, yeah, we're looking for XState as well. This is really cool. Great library that can help, yeah, manage complex state stuff. So let's see, there was something else I was going to mention.
What about Zustand and Recoil?
Yeah, so Zustand is great. People that I know I know are very thoughtful about their state management solutions. Use Zustand, and so it's created by Paul. I can't say his last name, but he's an amazing engineer, really smart person, and I trust and respect him. So I could see how people could find Zustand really useful. I haven't used it myself, so I can't really speak to that. But Recoil solves a different problem, and the same person who created Zustand also created Jotai. And so if I were to choose, or if I had the problem that Recoil and Jotai solves, then I would use Jotai. Oops, I misspelled that. Jotai React. Because it has better support for TypeScript. But yeah, it's great, but it's really important that you understand that it's solving the problem that you have. If you use this to solve, or if you don't have the problem that this solves, then you're just adding complexity. So a really great way to determine what problem this solves is actually from Recoil. They have a video where they introduced Recoil, and it's fantastic, really great talk. So give that a watch, and if that sounds like a similar problem to what you're having, then you can use Recoil. Recoil is great, or you can use Jotai. It's another implementation of a very similar type thing. It solves the same problem. And yeah, hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you so much. But regarding Apollo, would you neglect it if you are using GraphQL to manage your local state management?
Yeah, so I have mixed feelings about Apollo, mostly because of this. Apollo depends on GraphQL, naturally, and GraphQL is enormous. So yeah, and then Apollo client by itself is nothing to sneeze at either. It's also quite large. So you put all that together and you end up with just a huge payload for your users to download. Now, if the bundle size doesn't really matter for you, then okay, that's lucky you, I guess. But yeah, this is what has driven me away from using Apollo for, I've never used Apollo for this reason. But I know a lot of people use it and really love it. So if you have a I wouldn't create a GraphQL backend just so you could use Apollo, I guess is what I'm saying, because we have use query from React Query and use mutation from React Query, and they're great. So if you have an existing backend, then I would just use React Query. If you have a backend that supports GraphQL, then you can choose, because React Query supports GraphQL just as well. It doesn't do normalized queries like Apollo does. So there are different trade-offs that you need to make there. But yeah, it really comes down to what problems do you have, and do these libraries solve the problems that you have?
Okay, thank you so much, Kent.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else in the Zoom call have a question?
Hey, Kent.
Hi, Michael.
Hey. Yeah, thank you so much for doing these. Yeah, just kind of maybe expanding on the last question there. I have a Firebase app. Not sure kind of your experience there. But for kind of my state management, yeah, I'm downloading kind of all the state from the Firestore, storing it in a context provider. And then anytime that I need to update state, it's actually just a update request back to Firebase. And I have kind of the document listeners that the Firebase API provides. So anytime that there's a change, like on the server side, it just pulls the new data. And then I'm just updating state, just calling set state in my providers, and then all the consumers of that context, kind of all the way down the React tree, just appropriately update with the new, content. So just wondering, yeah, kind of with something like either React Query, or is there something else, like React Query could potentially seem like it's good for maybe something in the middle in this case. Like I didn't, to be honest, didn't put too much thought into kind of how I do state management. It was just kind of, I have Firebase and this is kind of a way to get live updates. So I'll just chuck it in a provider because I have a ton of components that rely on the state. Yeah, I'm just wondering your thoughts.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of thoughts. I'm sorry about my cough. Luckily, you can't catch any virus that I might have over the internet. So as hard as I cough into this microphone. And so, yeah, that sounds like a perfectly fine way to manage this sort of thing. I think that where things get really complicated is if you decided you wanted to both update the local state, and like do an optimistic update or something, update local state, and then also update Firebase. And then when it comes with its update, you have to like compare. It gets really complicated. And that's actually something that React Query does a really good job of if you wanted to do optimistic updates. Now, I imagine Firebase is pretty fast for most of your users, and you know, Firebase seems to be pretty quick. But then the next problem that you have, you mentioned that you have a lot of components that are consuming this state. And so when I hear a lot of consumers, then the first thing that I think of is, well, okay, maybe there could be some performance implications here if it takes a lot of work to keep those, or if each one of those consumers really is re-rendering anytime there's a state change. Now, there's not a whole lot that you can do about that if those consumers actually change something based on those state changes. But if they only care about a slice of the state, just some part of the state, and then an update comes in and it's like, oh, I actually don't care about this part of the state. I'll just return the same JSX as I did last time. And that's what we call an unnecessary re-render. And that can be, it can be a problem. So what I would suggest is doing some profiling like with the production build and seeing whether you have a performance bottleneck. And I don't know, Michael, do you have Epic React?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the production or the what's the performance workshop right in here. Let's see. Yeah, it's one of these. I think it's probably this. Yeah, actually probably all of them will teach you little tricks of things that you can do. But follow some of the things that I show you in this to make sure that you're profiling it properly. So like you're building for production mode and everything. And then just profile it to make sure that this isn't a problem. And if it is, then you can use some other of the things that I talked about to help you isolate which components are rendering unnecessarily and seeing how you can fix those. And then you can test it again after you've fixed those problems. So actually that will probably be this fix perf death by 1,000 cuts, where you have tons of consumers, not a single one of them is slow, but all of them together rendering unnecessarily is slow. So anyway, that's just like, that may not be a problem that you have at all, which is why I'm saying measure first. But that's just a thought that comes to my mind when I hear a lot of consumers, especially with stuff like real-time data where things are updating a lot. And actually, that's the sort of thing that concurrent mode will hopefully help us with a great deal, is not blocking the UI thread as things are updating, so that users can continue to interact with your app, even if it is taking a while to get things updated. So yeah, but like from an architectural standpoint, what you have sounds fine. I don't see any maintenance problems or anything like that.
For sure, yeah. I specifically kind of avoided trying to do the optimization of local state and then trying to merge with Firebase. Just send it to the source of truth, and then if something fails with that update, then just try to handle it. But
yeah, I think that's the way to go. And this is what React Query gets right as well, is you just have to embrace the fact that what you have locally is not true. Like it is a lie. You can't know for certain that the state that you have locally is correct. And so how could you possibly update that state if you don't know that it's even correct? I know a lot of libraries try to surgically update just the part of state that changed, but you're missing out on all the other parts of state that may have changed since the last time you got your data. So yeah, just sending it all back to Firebase and then letting Firebase send you back the updates is good. The one challenge with that is when the user performs some sort of action, they have to wait that whole time before they see the reaction to their changes. So for example, if I go here and I click the check mark, you'll notice that the UI updates instantly, even though I've still got a spinner right here. So we remove that and add it as we add it and remove it from our red list. And so that's working with optimistic updates thanks to React Query. But if I go to, let's see, exercise, I think it's 6. Oh man, it's not gonna autocomplete for me. Ah, shoot. Yeah, it's exercise 6, and it's not gonna complete it. I think it's cache management. Yeah, sweet. So this is the final version of that exercise, which does not include the optimistic updates. So you'll notice we wait until that finishes and then the UI updates. We wait until it finishes and then the UI updates. And if I enable the DevTools, then I can actually control how long that takes, that request takes. So the minimum request time here, we're going to just make it take 5 seconds. So now I say, okay, I actually have not read this book, so I'm going to mark it as unread. and I have to wait 5 seconds before I get the UI update that says that, oh, this actually worked. So that's a long time for that to happen. So that's something to consider when you take that architectural or make that architectural decision. However, I think that you might be able to make that work yourself. The optimistic updates. The biggest challenge with optimistic updates is what happens if you have a request failure. So here, I'll just up the request failure percentage to 100%. So now I click on this. If I were to do an optimistic update, I would show the stars. But then when this request fails, yeah, I think it's making another request here, and it's going to try that. It does a couple retries by default. We fix this later in the exercises. But if you do an optimistic update and then that request fails, then you have some, not only is your cache old, but also the optimistic update is wrong. And so that is not a great thing you don't want to have that sort of a situation. So, so you have to have some sort of error recovery, which complicates the logic even further. And that's one of the things that I really like about React Query is it makes doing this really simple. And I can show you what that looks like as well. Let's see, this will be in our list items utils here. This is where our hooks are. Yeah, so our default mutation options, we have this on error. This takes an error, all the variables, and a recover. I actually only use recover. So what this third argument to our on error is it's whatever is returned from our on mutate. So when this mutation is called, when we say, hey, go do this mutation, React Query will call this on update mutate. And what this is going to do is this performs our optimistic update. And so we say, here's what we had before. I'm just going to grab that from the cache really quick. And then I'm going to go through the cache and I'm going to update the cache to have this new item. So we're going to have these changes to the cache so that we get that optimistic update. So this happens synchronously, the UI updates, everything looks great. And then we return a function, which I call recover. So whatever you return from this is what you're going to get as the third argument. So you could return, like we could return the previous items itself and then have this function update the cache or whatever. This is just the way I like to do it, and it works out really nicely. So React Query makes it really easy to do optimistic updates because of this API. And so, yeah, I don't know if I can show you that because we've got, yeah, let's see, extra 4. I can't remember which extra credit this optimistic updates is in. I may have messed this up. Anyway, you go watch the videos and it's great, but and work through the exercises and build this out. So all of that to say, using the backend as a source of truth is the only right way to do it. But it does come with trade-offs if the request takes a long time. So optimistic updates is a great way to kind of sidestep those trade-offs, but optimistic updates are complicated. And React Query, for me, has made it really easy to do optimistic updates and not worry about error or like needing to recover from errors because it makes it so simple to do that. And then, yeah, my last thought is I think that you should be able to use React Query with Firebase. This is like my final thing to say about this. So yeah, I believe that you should be able to get all of the benefits that we have with React Query and still be able to go with the approach that you have. So you may be able to swap out the context provider and all of that stuff that you've created with just React Query. And I think that would work out pretty well. And I'd love to hear how that goes for you. So I don't know if that's something you're interested in, Michael, but hopefully all of that was sort of helpful.
No, it was. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ken.
Yeah. Let me just get some of these links in here. Yeah, here, I'll grab that too. Why not? Somebody can play around with that. I gotta fix this because one of these days I'll come here and I'll be like, why is everything taking so long? Yeah, and I'll just paste this in as well. go watch that. It's great. Okay, cool. Any other questions here in the Zoom before I check out Discord? Okay, cool. I'll go check out Discord. So coming up, I noticed a couple of questions. Okay, so Raphael, who is here. Hi there, Raphael. You're asking about use ref, this use ref warning. I think I looked at this or I saw it. Yeah, so it warns about both reads and writes during render. It's only safe if you're implementing the lazy initialization pattern, which I can show you. Sorry. Yep. Yeah, so this one's going to be tricky. I'm not sure how he enables the lazy initialization pattern with this, what he's doing, but let's take a look. So basically the lazy initialization pattern is right here. So with state, if this is an expensive operation, then we can put that in a function and it's only called once on the initial render, which is great. With useRef, there's no such API. You can't provide a function to useRef, which is, I have no idea why they didn't do that. I feel like it's something they could do, and I'm not sure why they don't. So the problem with this is every single render, we're going to be making a new intersection observer, even though this argument is ignored for all except that first render. So they just ignore it. So it's a waste creating that new intersection observer. Yeah, useRef does not accept a special function overload like useState, which I don't know. I don't get it. Instead, you can write your own function. And actually, I just realized they can't do that without a breaking change, because if I pass a function to useRef and they made that change, then I'd be toast. So yeah, that'd be a breaking change, which is a real shame. You can write your own function that creates and sets it lazily. So here is what they do. They initialize it to null. Then they have a function that will check if it's null, and if it is, then it'll initialize it and then return the current. And then when you need it, you call get observer. Now, that's all well and good, unless you need to, the thing that you're initializing, you need during render. For example, I just did this the other day on Code Sandbox. So I'll give you a dashboard. Is that what it is? Yeah. So I think it was a most recently created Code Sandbox. Yeah, here it is. I think this is it. No, this is a class. I made a fork of this, and I did it for that. Let me see if I can find it. Is it this one maybe? Yeah, here we go. So I did that here. So we have this, here, let me bump that up so you can see that better. We have this modal component, it pops up and we're happy about that, whatever. And so I have this element that I want to render it to. And I'm going to be using the React DOM create portal API. And then we pass the DOM element to React create portal, similar to React DOM.render. So the problem is that you call React DOM create portal inside of during the render phase. And so you have to have a DOM node in existence during the render phase. But I don't want to just have a bunch of DOM nodes that are all just ready to be portalized or whatever. So I create the DOM node before I render the portal, like this. So I say, here, let's get that ref. And if that doesn't exist, then we'll create it. And as far as what I understand from this warning, this is going to get a warning. But this, first of all, what it's warning against is totally legit. You don't want to, you could run into bugs if you're assigning a value to current during render, possibly. But we are protecting, but the way that we're doing this is totally concurrent mode safe. It doesn't matter if this gets called and then thrown away and then it gets called again. We still just have the document or the element, so we don't really care to make a new one or whatever. So yeah, so that's that would be a problem if this isn't supported. And maybe I'll just comment on here. I should probably read it first. But I'll just comment and see what they have to say. Hey friends, would this warn for this type of situation? If so, how would one create a DOM node for a portal? Would I have to manage this in a use effect and set not render until I get a chance to create the DOM node in the effect callback? Seems kind of weird. Okay, we'll see what they say about that. I don't know, maybe they already said something. It's normally better to read their comments before you just make a random comment. But anyway, so Raphael, does that answer your question, sort of? Those are my thoughts on that. I think it's generally a good idea, but I'm curious how they avoid or how they would support this type of situation.
I think in relation to the portal example, at some point I put together my own portal component. And what I did is I set the DOM element in state from an effect, and then like did a null check and render for the DOM element's existence. I'm not sure if that would like cause any issues, but it seemed to work fine.
Yeah, it'll work. And that's what my last comment in that, what I wrote was like, do I have to manage this in state? Alternatively, like there's no reason you can't do L equals React use state and then document create element div. So that would be another solution to this.
You might even prefer that.
Yeah, I would definitely prefer that over use effect stuff. And honestly, like I think that I would create a use better ref that does that under the hood, because I don't want to see that in my code, but I don't mind seeing a use better ref. I know that Ryan and Michael have this this hook in their code. They tweeted about it in their remix code. That's basically like a use better ref or use lazy ref or something like that. And they do the what I was doing in that modal component. But I don't see any reason why to not just use state. So that would probably be what I would end up doing, but that's just seems wrong to me. It's really a shame that they didn't enable lazy refs. But I don't know. Okay. Great. Let me just check to see if there are any contextual comments. Yeah, here it is. Thanks, Kellen. The use lazy ref. So that's what they're doing, which, you know, it seems to work. But from what I can tell from that pull request, this will result in a warning. So there's that. Okay, cool. Let's come up here. And Ryan is asking about exercise 4 in advanced React hooks. So let me go to that. And just get this started. And it's in my solution, I think. Okay, so yeah, this one is really simple. Like literally the whole exercise is to add the word layout. That's the whole exercise. So like with the performance workshops, it's not about the code that you change. It's about the tools that you learn to know what code to change. So there's typically not a lot of code to change. But the question from Ryan, which I read earlier, is here. Well, let's see the problem that we're solving here first. So in our let me back this up. Or actually, you know what? Let's just do isolated page. We'll do the exercise file here. Okay. And there's Cody. Here's Cody. Hello. My wife, actually, my birthday was yesterday, and my wife made me a costume for Cody as one of my birthday presents. So here's Cody as a superhero. Here's his cape. Isn't he cute? Cody's great. So yeah. So the question is, or the problem is, when I add this message, you'll notice that the message gets added, and then we scroll. So it's kind of a janky experience there. And in the solution, we don't have that problem. It takes a second for that message to get added, but we don't have the janky experience of like add and then scroll. So the question is, why does use layout effect fix this problem? And let's talk about where the problem comes from in the first place. So the state update happens inside of our app. And so anytime our app re-renders, it's going to re-render all of its children. We could memoize the slow sibling and then we wouldn't have this problem at all. But I'm trying to simulate, hey, you've got a bunch of components that need to render for one reason or another, and rendering all of them ends up being really slow. Maybe there's one sibling that's really slow. And so that's the case for the slow sibling. We have a use effect that sleeps for 300 milliseconds, and this is just a while loop. So it's just simulating you've got something that is really slow to render for some reason. And that's a sibling to the message display. So what happens when I do this update is it comes in here and it updates the DOM. And so here it's going to render all of the messages. And so that's what we see in the first place is we see this. I click on this. Here, I'm in the final. Let's go back here. So I click on this. You see the DOM gets updated, but then we have to wait for that slow sibling before we can do our use effects here. And this actually has something to do with the order in which the use effects are called. So I believe actually if we move the slow sibling first, then we won't have this problem. Nope, looks like we still do. Yeah, and I think that's probably because it's running synchronously, so it doesn't yield. So it doesn't matter what order these run in, because React calls one, and then it calls the next, and then it calls the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. And when it's all done, then React can yield the event loop, or it yields to the browser, and the browser can say, oh, okay, you've changed the DOM, and specifically our DOM changes right here, but the browser can't repaint that DOM change because our code is still running right here. So it's taking a while for that to happen. So yeah, so this sort of thing can happen. Like maybe it's not just one slow sibling, you have hundreds of React elements and all of them have use effects and different things, and so it ends up taking some time. And so this is how I teach the use case for use layout effect, because when you make an observable different or change to the UI or to the DOM, then you need to use a use layout effect. Otherwise, you could end up in a situation where a DOM update happens, and then you have to wait for all of the use effects to run before you can make your modifications to the DOM, your manual modifications. And so that's why use layout effects fixes this, because it sets it on a different or path. So it says, okay, I'll update the DOM, and then I'm going to, right after I update the DOM, before I even let the browser paint the DOM, I'm going to run all of these layout effects, and then I'll let the browser paint, and then I'll run all of the regular effect callbacks. And they can take as long as they want to, and it's normally not a big deal because the DOM has already been updated and they're not making any observable changes to the DOM. They're making net requests or local storage updates. So yeah, if we come over here now, then we're going to see our scroll happens without any trouble. So anyway, that's the idea behind this this exercise. And hopefully that answers your question, Ryan. Okay. Yeah, and to be clear, it's not React that's making this this DOM update. We are making the DOM update in this case. So React makes the DOM updates here, and then browser paints, and then React calls our use effects. We make a DOM update, but the browser can't paint until all of our user effects are done. And so what the change that we're making happen is we let React make its DOM updates, and then we make our DOM updates, then the browser paints, and then React calls all of our asynchronous or our use effects after that DOM paint. So basically what you don't want to have is a React updates, browser paints, we run, browser paints again. You don't want to have that situation. You want the browser to paint just once per update. Boy, that was a lot better summary. So, okay, cool. Let me just check for contextual comments. Nope. Okay, so I don't know if we'll be able to get through all these questions, but hopefully. Yeah, okay, this is yeah, this is a great question. So why would I use get by when I can just get away with learning a single query by, which works for all scenarios? The reason is I can actually probably demonstrate this if we find any one of these tests that uses a get by. Right here. Okay. So if I change this to blah, and we'll say this is a query by, and typically you're going to say expect input to be in the document, right? So you're going to query for it. You're going to, here, let's just change it to Pokemon, change it back. So like it works fine, no problems whatsoever. And the problem comes with this. If you can't find it, then this is the error message that you get. If you switch to a get, then this is the error message that you get. One of those is better than the other, and it's the get. So this is why we go with get rather than query, because we can give you a much better error message. If you just use query all the time, then we don't know if you're expecting it to be in the document or not. We just go and get it, and if it's not there, then we return null. But if you use get, then we know that you expected it to be in the document, so we can throw an error that is really helpful and shows you the whole document. If you wanted to do this same thing with query, then you'd have to say if not input, then screen debug. And then you could sort of do this same thing yourself, but like who wants to do that? I'd just rather use get. So that's what's going on there. Just much better error message there. Have an assertion fail instead of having your test throw. Actually, Oscar, an assertion failing is the same thing. So an assertion failing is your test throwing. That's what's going on. A test is a function which, when called, does not throw an error. And if it throws an error, then that means the test failed. So I teach about this in testingjavascript.com, where we build our own assertion library. And you'll see that under the hood, it's simply throwing errors. So yeah, yeah, that's what's going on there. Another question. Yeah. So this is a tricky one. So testing whether something is not in the document is, I just did this. It's not something we have like really great support for in React testing library, and we probably should. It's not a really common thing, but it definitely is a thing. The problem is that, like, how long do you wait, right? If you're manually testing something, how long should you wait before you say, okay, it's not in the document? Like, maybe it just takes a long time to show up. So like it's really difficult to be confident that that everything is settled and nothing's going to appear in the document after your assertion. So that's the biggest challenge. But when you've mocked out everything, you can pretty much rely on saying, okay, after maybe like 50 milliseconds, if it's not there, it's never going to be there. Like if you mock out HTTP requests and stuff. I'm trying to remember where I just did this in one of the workshops. I think it may have been Advanced React Hooked. So let me see if I can. Oh, actually, that's this one. That's where we are. Let me see if I can find this. It may have been in here. Or let's see. Yeah, right here. So in this case, we're actually not waiting for an element not to appear. We're waiting for an error not to happen. So this is the extra credit where we say, it is, yeah, safe dispatch with use callback, use ref, and use effect. That's so that you don't get the warning, can't perform React state update on unmounted component. So we're just testing, if I unmount this component while the request is in flight, do I get a state update? Because you shouldn't. You should cancel that request or just simply not update the state. And so it's difficult to do that sort of assertion because you're like, well, how long do you wait? And so because all of our mocked requests are, or all of our requests are mocked, I'm pretty confident that even on a slow computer, 100 milliseconds or a slow CI, 100 milliseconds should be a reasonable, or if there are no warnings after 100 milliseconds, then we should be fine. And so that's the approach that I take when I say, okay, let's wait for just a little bit, and then we can make some synchronous checks. So that's my current recommendation. I don't like it. Yeah, I don't think it's a great way to know for sure, but I don't know of any other reliable way to check that. So anyway, I'll just paste this in right, or I'll paste all of this in right here. This Alfred tip thing is just a utility that I have. So here, let me fix that. I'll confuse somebody. We'll just grab this. There you go. Okay, cool. So hopefully that helps, Oscar. Good luck. Hi there, Ellen. Moment.js getting deprecated, maintenance mode. Yeah. So actually, I think day.js. So let's see. There was one that we're using in Epic React that I recommended because I don't build the Epic React platform, but I do review the PRs and stuff. And I noticed that they were adding Moment.js, and I was like, let's not add a thing that's been deprecated. So let me find what I recommended. Where'd it go? That's weird. It appears to no longer be in here. Yeah, I can't remember what I recommended. Let's see. I think it was date functions, maybe. I'll recognize the documentation site. I think this is the one. Maybe. Yeah, I can't remember. There are a couple of them that are pretty good. I pretty much would just, like, the nice thing about all of these modern date utility libraries is you can just grab the piece that you care about and it'll tree shake and everything. So you just look for what you need and which one of these libraries is going to provide you the most value. I think somebody also mentioned like Intel from MDN. I don't know if they did, but like it's impressive what the browser can do these days. So yeah, so check, and actually Elijah Manor date. Oh, here we go. Natively format dates. Yeah, this is pretty good stuff too. So like it, oh yeah, it was Emmer. I saw that. Yeah, depending on what you need, you might be able to go with like native stuff, which is pretty cool. Okay, cool. I'm gonna try and speed through these last few in the 7 minutes that we've got left. Arpan is wondering if I plan to update the chart to include, yeah, I should. So this is my state management thing, and I really should get this chart updated. The problem is I didn't make this chart. I made a really bad looking one, and then somebody made a better one. But yeah, we probably should have another step in here that says, are you structuring your components to be composable? You know, and then compose those components. Yeah, I should do that sometime. that'll probably not happen anytime soon. It's low priority. Sorry. But if anybody wants to do that, then that would be great. The blog post has been updated to talk about composition, I believe. So that's good, at least. How do you test a CLI tool? So I've got KCD scripts, which is relatively okay tested. I'm not super happy with it, but you can go dive into that and see what I do. There was also a split guide. Yeah, this one has some interesting tests as well that you might find fascinating. We've got fixtures, and then, yeah, I think it's snapshots in here. Yeah, it's kind of wild. It's kind of crazy stuff. But yeah, so you can take a look at how I test those. And I often will take snapshots of like the output. So I call it with help command, and then I snapshot the output. And that actually works out pretty nicely too. Okay. The require thing in the middle of the test case. Oh yeah. So let's see the bookshelf app. And if I node go to even, yeah, we'll just go to the routing one. Whoops. So if we go to the test, you're not really supposed to worry about looking at the test. They can kind of help guide you. But yeah, what's going on right here is we're requiring one directory up, and that resolves to this index. So I'm literally I'm saying run this file. That's what's happening in that test, which is pretty cool. So I get everything set up so that it's like we're running in a real browser. Our document has a root that has an ID of root, and we put that in the body, and then I require it, and that results in this getting rendered to that element. So I'm running everything in this test. So it's as close to an end-to-end test as you can get without actually being end-to-end. And we're mocking out API calls with the MSW. But yeah, so the reason that I do it this way is because if I used Cypress, then it just adds a lot of overhead for people running the tests as they're working on stuff. And so I just decided, let's just make it as much of an end-to-end test as we can without actually having it be end-to-end. So it can just run in the terminal. And that was the choice that I made. It works pretty well. So that's what's going on here. It just runs this file. Okay, cool. Deal with the junior heavy team struggling beyond the basics of React. I would give them epic react.dev and have them go through it all. And then just have them build stuff like, I mean, you probably have a product that you need built, but presumably you're worried about their inexperience leading to a difficult to maintain product. And if that's what you're worried about, then have them build smaller products to experiment and try things out. I'm sure that that's probably something that's difficult to do because you have a product to build. But if you're really worried about that, then having them build other things that don't matter as much might be a good strategy while they're developing their skills. But yeah, Epic React is going to get them beyond the basics for sure. Cool. Thanks for that. No, you should be fine. Go ahead, Karan, and take whatever time that you need. I'm planning, not promising, but I'm planning on doing office hours for the foreseeable future. They're working out really nicely for me. And so if you decide to start up Epic React next year or something, then I should still be here helping out. And we'll have like hundreds of, or even thousands of people in this Discord who have gone through all of this stuff. And our community is just super awesome and helpful and friendly. So yeah, should be good. Netlify for the win. I love Netlify. Yeah, this is another one, King Darrow. Thanks for mentioning that. I missed that comment earlier. Yeah. So this is the sort of thing that could be solved that I think suspense will really help a lot with. But another thing that that could help is React Query. Now you will still have to check the status, like, do I have my data? Is it loading? Is it pending or whatever? And you have to do a short circuit, return a loading spinner or whatever. There's not really a way to get around that, but suspense will make that sort of thing declarative, and it will make it a lot easier to manage. So you're expressing a pretty common problem that is so common that the React team is working to solve it. So I don't have much more to say than that. I would suggest looking into React Query though, so you don't have to have your own use effects all over the place. So, okay. How do you think job interviews are or front-end developer role, React specific, should be conducted? Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by DS, but I don't use like algorithm questions when I interview. I pretty much, I like to have the interview be an opportunity for them to show me how good they are at whatever they do. And so that's the sort of questions that I ask them, is like, tell me the coolest thing that you've done. Like, tell me what you really enjoy. What do you see yourself doing in 5 years? And sometimes, like, often if somebody says, well, I'm an expert React developer and I'm really good at React and I love React and it's awesome, then I'll say, okay, well, that's, you mind if I have you code up a couple of React components for me? And the first component that I have them write is a simple counter component, like literally this. And they can do a class if they want to. When I was interviewing, it was classes, but this is all that I want. And I tell them it just needs to be a button, has a number in it, and every time I click on that button, it should increment the number. Build me that. And if somebody says I'm a React expert, all that I'm trying to determine is what they think an expert is. Like, how good is a React expert in your eyes? If you call yourself an expert, or can you do this? And you'd be surprised how many people had no idea how to do something as simple as this and they called themselves an expert. That told me a lot. So like, I realized that in an interview situation, it's really uncomfortable and like you're not in your own IDE maybe or whatever. But if you can't do this and you say you're a React expert, I'm sorry. The interview is not the reason you can't manage state. And I don't mind if they like struggle. Oh yeah, like I forgot to import React or whatever. Like that's whatever. It's just not having enough React experience to be able to do this. And then like, if they really said they're an expert, they just plow through this, then I'll say, okay, well, let's keep it updated in local storage. And let's, what if I had a backend I wanted to hit, how would you do that? But yeah, it's typically like, show off to me, show what are you really good at? That's what I typically tried to do. And then based on that, I would say, can I take what they have and use it on my team? So that's, yeah. Cool, nice suggestion. Possible to somehow memorize functions that are returned from third-party hook to use inside use effect. Yeah, it's totally possible. Yeah, oh, I see. So like you are calling some hook. I mean, it's technically possible. If it's a pure function, it's way easier to do that. But if it's not a pure function, then like presumably they're using some closure variables. That would be impossible. Unless you knew exactly what those variables were and you could add those to your dependency array, you would end up with a stale closure. So if that's the situation you're facing, then your best bet is to go memoize the function in the third-party library by either making a contribution or forking it and just doing it yourself, or vendoring the library. Yeah, because yeah, you could end up in a stale closure if you don't list all the actual dependencies that it has. Okay, quick question. Why doesn't anybody in the React community seem to use named functions for use effect callbacks? I think it's primarily for me, I pretty much never use name functions for callbacks, mostly because I'm lazy. I don't think that there's anything wrong with this. I would not reject a PR for this or anything. I think this is great. So feel free to keep doing what you're doing. Errors would probably be better writing this, because if there's an error thrown, then the stack trace will include the function name. So yeah, I think the reason why is because there's like all the documentation does this. I do this and I teach a lot of people. So yeah, this is one of those things where I'm like, I admit that this is objectively better, but I'm still going to do it my way. Just like how I'm a 2 spaces forever, even though I know that tabs is objectively better. So sorry, Kellen, but keep it up. You're an inspiration to all of us. I'm just a terrible person. Knock versus MSW for mocking API calls. I don't know if they have a comparison chart. I never really liked knock personally. I felt like it there was too much magic with the APIs. I can't remember that. That's just a feeling that I have. I can't remember where that feeling came from, but that's the feeling that I have about it. Whereas MSW seems a lot more transparent. Yeah, like I can't tell that MSW is being used directly. Or maybe I can't remember what it was, but I use MSW like now today. I'd say use MSW because you can use it both in the browser as well as in Node, which is just so nice to be able to do. So you have it for your storybook, and you have it for your app when you're working offline, and you have it for your tests. So it's no competition to me now. MSW is the thing, because you can do it like anywhere JavaScript is run. You can use MSW. It's great. Except maybe native. I don't know how that would work. Well, native runs in Node when you're running your tests, but I don't know about like when you're doing development. I don't think it can do that, but it might be able to one day. You could ask. That's kind of interesting. Okay, sweet. Yes, this is true, Judd. Which is why normally we don't use specific time amounts, and instead we use utilities like wait for. But again, you just don't know how long to wait to know whether something doesn't happen. It's hard to when you don't know what you're waiting for. You're waiting for something to not happen, and you have to wait a certain amount of time before you decide it's not going to happen. Okay. So yeah, you will not be able to use this as a dependency in use effect. You will get an ESLint warning. Yeah, I mean, if you're doing, if my object is defined like this, then I don't know why you'd have the question mark, because my object would always be an object. Yeah. So the reason is that the ESLint plugin has trouble knowing whether you're doing things correctly if you're dynamically generating values for your dependency array. So what you can do, if for some reason you really do need to do this, is you do this check within the use effect callback and you exit early if it's not what you want. So yeah, that's what you could do. Deal with split second page renders before redirecting to login. Yeah, so it is not possible to do a 302 redirect, and this is why client-side redirects are bad. I've got a blog post about this. You gotta be kidding. I need to fix this bot, because this absolutely should have popped up this one. So yeah, don't use client-side redirects for SEO purposes and everything else. The one big challenge with this is for like what you're talking about, login. So this is where edge functions come into play. So like cloud front worker, and then also netlify edge functions. hold on. CloudFront, what is it? Edge, Lambda Edge, is this it? No. I want CloudFront. Cloudflare. Flare? There we go. There we go. Yeah, so you want something like Cloudflare Workers or Netlify Edge, which is currently in beta. But these functions are supposed to run in like 10 to 50 milliseconds, so they should be very fast. But you can do a little authentication check in these to say, oh, they're not authenticated, let's redirect them to login. And then you get all the benefits of SEO and everything else. So this is where you would do that sort of thing. Oh no, I missed a question. Paul, show me your question. Yeah, and then of course you could also just have, if your app is server rendered, then you can just do it on the server. It's not as cool as this, but it's probably a little easier if you have it already set up to do that. Okay, so let me see if I can find Paul's question. Paul's typing. Let me see. Here we go. Ah, sorry. I thought that was just you were sharing something. Sorry about that. Oh yeah, I remember seeing this earlier. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to say about this is Dan has a blog post about use interval. Okay, where's overreacted? Come on. There we go. So check this blog post out. Well, first of all, I'd say like this looks pretty much fine. Just make sure you're covering a couple of things like what Dan talks about in that blog post. And then, yeah, and then another thing, you don't need to generate a random string. What I would do is I'd say use state with 0, and then I'd call set key. You just increment it. So you don't need to worry about generating a random string, just increment that number. And that would work. Yep. I mean, alternatively, you could have this click handler be a function that clears the previous one and sets a new one. Like that would work too, but then you'd basically have this logic in 2 places. So I wouldn't recommend that, but that is another alternative. Yeah, so yeah, and actually what Brooks is talking about here is correct. You shouldn't need to use a ref for this. It should work fine without a ref. If you wanted to do an event handler, then you would need a ref, but because it's all contained inside of this use effect, you should be fine with that as well. Hopefully that answers your question, Paul. My take on TypeScript. I did not know that Facebook is writing React in TypeScript or rewriting it. That's interesting.
Are they actually?
Yeah. Sorry, what?
Are they actually?
I don't know. I had not heard that. I mean, it wouldn't be a total shocker, but I would be pretty surprised.
Yeah, because like Flow and like Facebook went together like peanut butter and jelly. I'd be really surprised to see them switch over.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jest was rewritten in TypeScript.
Well, yeah, but then just disconnected from Facebook, didn't they?
Or are they not? I'm pretty sure they're still under the Facebook org. Yeah, they're still within Facebook.
Okay.
But they are definitely a more community-driven project than React is, for sure. So yeah, I don't know. I would be surprised, not totally shocked, but I would be surprised if that were the case. Either way, my take on TypeScript is if you're building something that you want to maintain in the long term and you have several engineers working on it, and like engineers come and go, TypeScript is pretty much a must. You save so much trouble using TypeScript. You invite a lot of trouble into your life using a type language, but it's the good kind of trouble because it forces you to think about your types ahead of time rather than when production comes down because your types are wrong. So yeah, I would definitely recommend using TypeScript. I don't use TypeScript in any of my stuff, and let me tell you why. let me actually first preface this by saying I did use TypeScript when I was at PayPal working on a team and stuff, but I don't use TypeScript in like my website. I don't use it on my instructional material, any of that stuff. The reason is, if my website comes down because I get my types mixed up, I don't really care. I'm not selling anything on my website directly. I can fix it in like a couple hours and I won't lose thousands of dollars or anything like that. Like, it's not a big deal to me. So the extra overhead of adding types, it just does not deliver a return for me. I don't use TypeScript in my open source stuff, mostly because I'm inexperienced with TypeScript and I would be frustrated by that, if I'm being honest. But also because I don't want the extra barrier to entry for contributors. So there's that. Eventually, if I get to using TypeScript a lot more, then I'll probably switch my open source stuff over to TypeScript. But as it is right now, I just don't have the experience or the patience to add it to my open source stuff. It's just smaller stuff, and I'm pretty confident with my tests as it is. Let's see. Oh, and my instructional material, I don't want to limit the people who can benefit from my instructional material to those who know TypeScript. So if you know TypeScript, then you can learn from plain vanilla JavaScript just fine. If you don't know TypeScript, you cannot learn from TypeScript material as well. So like, if I'm not teaching you TypeScript, then I'm not going to include TypeScript in my instructional material. Even if I totally switch all my stuff over to TypeScript, I'm still going to use vanilla JavaScript for my instructional stuff, unless I'm teaching TypeScript, in which case, of course, I'll be using TypeScript. So yeah, that's my take on that. Like I said, if I was on a product team, I would be using TypeScript for sure. But I just don't benefit from the value proposition that TypeScript offers. Okay. Yeah, using refs in a loop. So there's not really a way to do this. I don't have to have the time to dive into that question right now. So if you want to bring it back next time, I've got to wrap things up. So office hours twice weekly, except for this week. I'm not going to be doing office hours on Thursday. Not happening this week. I should probably add like a, canceled office hours section. Maybe that's what I'll do after I'm done here. Just to show you when I'm not going to be doing this. Yeah, I think that's everything. Thanks for coming with interesting questions, and thank you for the happy birthday wishes. Yeah, thanks everybody. We'll see you in the future. Goodbye.